Hi, this is Peter Teuscher. I'm here with Toby Demker. Thanks for joining us for another podcast where we pick a topic and see where the conversation takes us. We focus on topics around personal development, professional development, and a little bit of philosophy. Toby, you've got another great topic for us today, so I'm really eager to jump in and get started.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, it's maybe it'll be a little bit different this time because I've had a really great experience recently where I had a lot of time to think about life and racing, and so I'll use this as kind of a metaphor for the topic. So the topic is about resilience.
Mm-hmm.
You can call it endurance or resilience, and the context is that last almost a week ago now, I finished my first 90K race. So it's a race in Sweden called Ultravasan, and you start in one little village and you run to another city. And it's a very famous cross country skiing race actually, but now they've also added the running part to it. And I've never ever ran that far before in my life. So I mean, I'm sitting here, healthy and well. So
Yeah,
I'm
congratulations. I was
yeah,
very impressed when you wrote me, and I knew you had a race, but I didn't know it was 90K. I can't even imagine. I think that's my mental barrier. I can't even imagine running that far. But yeah, hats off. That's an amazing accomplishment.
Well, thank you. Yeah, yeah. It's something that I've been preparing for a long time. So, when you have that kind of sense of achievement of overcoming and an objective that you set up for yourself, it's always a good feeling.
Mm.
But I mean, it took me 10.5 hours, so it's a long time long time to run. It's a long time to think about stuff, and especially because when you're running for such a long time, you're going to have uh, phases during the race when it's really tough and it's hard, and you're considering why are you doing this. So I've had a lot of time to think about what is keeping you going. So about resilience, what's keeping you going, and how do you overcome these things to pursue the challenge or the task that you've been putting up for yourself. And there's so many aspects of that race and these thoughts that we can apply to life coaching or just our lives in general when we're dealing with changes or challenges or when it gets tough. So the first thing that comes to mind for me is really about, and that's where we started off our whole series about about these
Purpose.
podcasts.
Yeah,
Well, we talked about purpose first, and for me, maybe this is a little bit more about the vision, actually.
yeah, yeah.
And
Okay.
if we distinguish between these two, but when it gets tough, just having that mental picture of what is it going to feel like when you get there, and like what does that final line, what does it look like, and crossing that final line, you're going to have audience around you, just imagining what that looks like. And in coaching, this is something that we do all the time.
Mm.
Always start talking about the goal, right? So what does it look like, how's it going to feel like, what's going to happen then, etc., etc. And just having that image, that internal image during the race, it helps so incredibly much. There's and a lot of people have asked me, so when was the toughest part of the race? And I would say maybe between say 60 and 70K or something like that, because you've been running for a long time and you're getting tired and there's still a long way to go.
Mm.
But when you pass 70, it's kind of like whatever happens now, I know I'm gonna make it now if I don't get injured or anything. But if I just keep going a little bit more, I will be able to make it.
Mm.
But that part between there, when you really picture, okay, it's really tough right now, but I will be able to get to the finishing line, and I imagine what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like, and it's so unimaginably helpful to, and so motivating to understand I will get there, and it's going to feel awesome.
Yeah, that vision you
Yeah.
talk about. I mean, you're right. We use that in coaching. I've used that in workshops as well. But well, where I get it from is, I know they use this technique for the U.S. Olympic team. NASA uses it, and they call it motor visual recall. So they basically run through, the exercises. Like for NASA, they run through these things that they can't actually do, but they mentally rehearse them, and they see themselves successfully accomplish it. And for the Olympics, like running a race, they see themselves running through the tape and winning the race, or, just getting through that mental barrier. So I know the value of that is really good. And so what you're saying is that, having that clear vision of you completing a task successfully helps in your resilience, helps in getting you to the finish line.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a motivator. It's just it keeps you going. It's really really strong sense of motivation to have a clear picture, especially when you've done something similar before and you can actually that feeling of what it feels like.
Yeah.
And I was actually something that I was also reflecting on after I finished the race. When I was finishing, kind of showered, I went back to the finishing area, and I was watching other runners coming in. And I mean, you see a lot of those runners coming in, they're moved to tears because they're so happy and proud and tired of their achievement to reach that finish line. So it's really, really powerful.
Yeah, I imagine it's a very emotional experience because I've seen, you see people finish something that's really hard, and they just kind of, break, all their emotions come out because they've been so focused for such a. I remember seeing, when you see someone win a championship, like I'm a big basketball fan. I've seen famous basketball players make it to the finals, and then in the last game when they win the title, there's so much emotion, they break down into, like, it's just I think it's probably you're having that resilience to be ultra focused and stay on task and not let anything distract you and not let anything get you down, and then all of that stuff that you've been kind of keeping under control just comes exploding out of you. I mean, if you can put it that way.
Yeah, sure. Of course, that also puts into perspective if you don't make it, and if we have if the topic is resilience, and if this is not an experience that I had this time, but it could definitely happen to anyone. What if you get injured or for some reason you don't make it this time? How do you keep going then?
Yeah.
That's a little bit of a different story. You still have to still kind of visualize what it looks like, what it feels like, but then it's an extra, a much harder extra effort to try again, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think
get up.
Exactly. In dealing with failures, I think that requires a lot of resilience. So I think maybe at this point we should. Obviously, there's a strong connection. What you were talking about, we talk a lot about athletes and sports metaphors and so on, but obviously there's a strong connection between the mental resilience and the physical resilience, right? So,
yeah.
You obviously experienced both of those during your race.
Yeah, and the physical resilience, it is what it is, but the mental resilience maybe is more important when you come to when you get to that physical level of fatigueness. That the body can keep going, but what is your mind makes your body keep going. So that mental part becomes really, 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 really crucial here.
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with Steve Magnus. He was a track and field coach at a university in the U.S. for a long time. He's written a few books, but he was also involved in the Nike runners program, I think for American runners for the Olympics and so on. But he's written a book called "Do Hard Things," and it's a lot of that is about resilience, about the mental resilience and so on. But he has this what he calls toughness sequence, and it's a combination of three things. So it's what you're feeling, so physically what you're feeling, emotionally what you're feeling, and then your thoughts. So your feelings plus your thoughts. So that includes the inner voice and the doubts that you may have, and then the urge to act. Right. So that's and he talks a lot about if you are. It's got to be this combination. He doesn't believe in these, a lot of people have this picture of the military and the drill sergeant and pushing yourself beyond through all pain and irregardless of what your body's telling you. And or these old school, he refers to these old school kind of coaches that you just got to be tough. You don't show any weakness and so on. And he said that it's not normal. We have this that creates this picture that real successful people don't have any self-doubt, don't have any weaknesses. They don't, and that's not the case. Everybody has at some point some doubt, feels weakness, feels a sense of vulnerability. Everybody has that, and unless you're willing to acknowledge that, is what he says, it won't work for you. Only a very few elite people will ever find resilience if that's the case. But everybody feels that, and so I think it's important to acknowledge that resilience isn't this pushing through at regardless. He talks about, does it, like I think he makes a reference to climbing a mountain. Let's say you're about to reach you're only a short way from the peak, but you feel like your body's telling you that if you don't turn back, if you don't get back down soon, you're not going to make it, sort of thing, right? So knowing your body, and so when he talks about that urge to act, so on the one hand, the urge to be successful and to hit, make the pinnacle and to really achieve the goal you've set out to, or survival, right? Because obviously you've got those instincts that to keep yourself alive, and so on the one hand, you can push yourself. We have the ability to go much farther than we think we have. It's pushing through that resistance will get you to your higher potential. But for those people who are super ambitious or who totally ignore all their signals, they may push themselves too far, and then you can find injury or even worse. So I think his perspective is really interesting. And obviously he comes back. It was interesting because I related it to your your amazing achievement of running 90K, and him as a track and field coach. But he does a lot of this work on resilience and toughness and so on. And I think that's an important thing to reflect on.
That's super important. I mean, and it's so relevant to think about the amount of burnouts that we're having in our societies today. That very often we're pushing ourselves way too hard. And if we're trying to reach that pinnacle and don't realize that we're actually doing it at the cost of a physical or mental burnout, then it's not worth it. So having that kind of balance act in your mind all the time, really listening into your body. Is it time to take a break? Is it time to recover? Is it worth going for that pinnacle right now? I mean, now we're using the metaphor of the mountain, of course, it's a little bit different. But that awareness, I think that is resilience. What will get you there in the long run? I mean, realizing that this is not a sprint. Yeah. And to be able to function in the long run, you need to slow down sometime. You need to recover. You need to take breaks, etc., etc.
Yeah. Where do I stand right now, and what am I capable of doing? And not and not trying to do what is physically impossible for you in this moment. So I think that was a really good point. But I'd actually like to shift a little bit away from the sports metaphors, because I don't know, not all of our listeners may not be athletes or sports fans or whatever. But there was someone referred me to a while back to a video by a science fiction writer. His name's Brandon Sanderson. Anyway, he's a science fiction writer. I've never read any of his books, but he gave an interesting talk about the writing process, right? The creative process. And me, I enjoy writing a lot, and so I found it very relevant. But there's three things he talks about in terms of, because any kind of creative act, you can be in the same way that I've seen myself, when I've mentioned to you about sports, and I have, where my inner critic comes out the most is when I'm playing basketball. But sometimes also when I'm writing, you question yourself. And I think any of these creative acts, you're very, you're intrinsically motivated a lot of times, but then you're also, focused inwardly in that inner dialogue that comes up. And so, people will talk about writer's block or, things that demotivate you in the creative process and writing. And he talks about three things. And actually the bigger concept he talks about is, people will talk about follow your dreams, follow your passion, right? And I think that then we're talking about intrinsic motivation, right? So that's good. But also when you're too intrinsically focused, then you're not looking at the external feedback. And so there's got to be a practical side to it in order for you to be successful. Just like you didn't just follow your dream of having the race, you actually trained, you took steps. And that's one of the first thing, setting, he said when he first set out he wanted to be a novelist, that was just such a broad, big goal. So one of the things to help in his, if he got to a point and realized, well, written his first, manuscript, and it wasn't good enough, and he got rejected, and he gave up writing. Instead, he realized that doing lots of iterations and improving his skills, it really helped motivate him. So for him, it was one of the first steps in finding resilience in anything you do, whether it's a creative thing like writing a book, because I've written a book, and there was a time in my life I thought I don't know how I would ever put enough ideas on a page to write a book, right? But once you've done it, it feels, all of a sudden you can do another one, you can do another one. That's the beauty of success. Now that you can run a 90K race, and you'll be able to run another one if you have to. So he talks about setting better goals, not these broad things, but setting goals that you can, we do this as coaches, you can set milestones as well to a bigger goal that you have. So things that really will help give you the feedback. And when we also talk about celebrating the small wins, celebrating small successes, and that I think helps keep you going. That helps build resilience as well. And then I think there's not one right way. Another thing he talks about is there's not just one right way. So finding what works for you. So for some people, they just got to keep pushing through. But for other people, taking small breaks, reflecting, regrouping, and understanding what approach works the best for you. And for some people, they need to get big wins early, right? So that means lowering your bar for success so you can get those wins early. But for some people, it's just is visualizing the end goal and always keeping that in sight. So knowing how to work, and then and as with anything, when you set these, you have these dreams that you're trying to fulfill, breaking them down into smaller pieces so you're not getting overwhelmed. I think a big obstacle to resilience is that sense of overwhelmment, right? That's where you get that, I can't do it. I'm not gonna get through it. So I don't know. Do you have, when you're feeling overwhelmed, because there's times when I certainly do you have tips and tricks, tools that you use when you feel like the world's crashing in on me, or I can't get this thing done, or, do you have anything to help, get you back on track so you find the resilience to work through?
We talked a little bit about this before we started recording, actually. But having both a sort of a larger plan and a minor plan, right? So you have a big, well, if we talk about vision and objectives, etc. Okay, so we have an objective somewhere where we want to go in the long run. But then realizing that we can't be on that path all the time. It will get tough. It will be obstacles coming in our way. It might be a storm coming in, or it might be a sudden change, or you have the family emergency or whatever. And then, you have to deal with these things first. So resilience is all about bouncing back and being a little bit agile in that sense.
Yeah.
So having a sense of where the direction is going, but not being a slave to that plan. That's something that I've really learned and actually spent a lot of time sort of adjusting myself around. Because before I could be really rigid about my following the plan. I have to do it exactly like this, etc., etc. If it's a race or work or whatever.
Yeah, you get
But
tunnel vision.
now,
I've gotten that too. You get tunnel vision, right?
yeah, yeah, the tunnel, yeah. But then realizing that now I can't deal with this right now. Something else is more important, and that's okay. Just realizing that that is okay, and you can get back to that task later. And there will be a time, maybe in 2 weeks, where, I mean, if you have an emergency or for anything comes up, take the time to deal with that now, and then get back to things. So it's about having just shifting those perspectives. So what's the long-term goal and what's important right now?
Yeah, and maybe managing expectations, right? So so if you're expecting too much, the disappointment can really undermine your resilience, right?
Yeah. And well, actually, something that is, maybe it's a bit, I don't know, it's a bit silly to talk about, but being able to say no.
Hmm.
Because that, I mean, personally, that's something that I've really been struggling with in my past, and sometimes it still gets me into trouble because I like to say yes.
Yeah.
But then expectations and overcommitting. I want to be the nice guy that says yes to anything, but sometimes you can't do that, right? And just, yeah, being able to be clear about, I'd like to do this right now, but no, sorry, I can't help you with this right now, so I need to focus on something else.
Have you ever seen the Jim Carrey movie?
I
Great Canadian actor and comedian Jim Carrey. Um,
Yes, man.
yeah, and the yes man, yeah, and the thing is, he goes to that movie saying yes to everything, and then at the end, the guru guy that where he kind of got the inspiration from to start. It's like, it's not about saying yes to everybody else's things, right? It's about saying yes to the things that you're afraid of, but you really want, you really desire, right? So I can't remember exactly how it's been a long time since I saw that movie, but
Yeah.
but yeah, it's that whole thing of I think resilience is also about overcoming resistance, and then sometimes the biggest resistance we face in life is fear, right? So having the fortitude to kind of overcome those things, and saying yes to things because the only reason you're not doing them is because you're afraid, not because you don't want to, or it's not part of your aspiration or plan. So sorry, got a little off track there. But yes,
Yeah,
man.
no, it's on track, and actually that's what we're discussing. We're on track, off track at the same time.
Yeah,
But yeah, it relates to a lot to the things that I've been thinking about. Another thing, if I can just bring in another
absolutely.
perspective, is in motivational theory, we talked a lot about belonging, and in a sense, like that's something that I really experienced. That two things. One is what you mentioned before, that realizing that everybody is suffering the same kind of pain. It's difficult for everybody, right? And that gives you a little bit of a sense of it makes things a little bit easier, I guess. That that everyone else is suffering with you, so it's kind of a collective suffering.
And is there any kind of competitive motivation where you say, well, if he can do it or if she can do it, I can definitely do it? Like, does that motivate you as well in that kind of situation?
Kind of, yeah. I
Mm.
mean, you when you're able to pass people and people, because you're running along, and maybe someone will pass you, and then you pass them, and
Mm.
you pass them, and then they pass you. So you're doing it. It's a collective thing, but it's individual at the same time. So you know that you're sharing the same kind of pain and experience and suffering and joy. I mean, it's not only negative.
Oh no, of course not.
Negative
But
emotions.
I'm thinking of it in terms of when you're kind of thinking, well, you maybe never thought of giving up, but when you reach a point where it's like, I don't know if I continue, and then you see someone that's motoring along, seemingly effortlessly, or at least pushing through, that's the kind of thing where it's like, just when you think you can't go any further, but you see someone else then being able to make it, and you go, well, if they can do it, I can do it, right?
Yeah,
That can be a
definitely.
motivator, right?
Yeah, you motivate each other all the way.
Mm, cool.
But the second part of that is also, and that's actually something that the organizers were recommending prior to the race, that don't go into your bubble.
Mm.
talk to people. And after when I ran, I don't know, I think I had maybe 20K left or something. It was a guy that was running kind of beside me, and I asked, "Do you want to have a company?" And we started running together, and we started chatting, and it was
Nice.
just so much easier.
Yeah.
I mean, because it takes your mind off things, and you can chat about other things, and it gives you a little bit of energy, and you can listen to someone else, and you support each other, and it made the last 20K so much easier, just by sharing and getting some energy from other people, and being able to push each other and take your mind off the physical part of things, and just sort of, we're having a chat.
Yeah.
Nice.
I think solitude, I mean, there's a reason why it's considered you know, a harsh punishment in prison when people have solitary confinement. I think solitude is its own challenge, right? And I've heard about people when they try and sail around the world alone on a sailboat or something like that. I mean, that's one of the biggest things to overcome is being alone and dealing with your own thoughts and struggles. And I think when that's why when we started the conversation today, talking about resilience from both a mental and a physical perspective, because whether it's a meditation practice or doing yoga or doing a race or trying to do something really challenging like sail around the world, there are all these different things require a degree of resilience, both mentally and physically, right? I mean, even when you say, well, meditation's not physical, well, actually trying to keep your mind focused when your body's going, well, I can't sit like this anymore, or I've got an itch I need to scratch, or whatever, right? Or I'm getting hungry, or so it's always this combination of the physical and the mental, and then just finding your way to keep focused and get to your goal. In meditation, we don't recommend having a goal, right? It's just you meditate for the sake of meditating. But still, when I meditate, I still want to improve as a meditator, right? Although that kind of goes contrary to you meditate to get better at meditating, but I still want to. If I find I have a meditation where I can't seem to get, slow down the mental chatter, or I my breathing gets off or whatever, those are still things where, I want to get back and do it again. So there's the resilience to push through a challenge, but there's also, as you said before, if you have a failure or if you have a setback or if you have something that you continuously find you're not getting right, it's that growth mindset of not getting stuck in that I'll never be good at this, I'm just not good at this, to shifting, I can be good at this. I just need a little more practice, right? I think that's an important mindset is so important in resilience.
And to that point, I think if we again shift the context to say work or just life in general, when you're having a tough time, this is something that I experience all the time because I'm working a lot on my own. I don't have, I don't belong to a big organization. So if we don't have colleagues, who do you talk to when you run into trouble? Actually having a conversation with you, it's a great way to boost my resilience because I'm able to share ideas, to get inspiration, etc. So just having someone to talk to share your thoughts, get some other perspectives on things. So making sure that when you're running into any kind of obstacle or trouble, that you're take the time to call someone. Especially knowing so many of us are working home, it becomes really difficult. So really make an effort to create that belonging, to go out for a walk with someone, your neighbor or colleague, or even just have a lot of people that I know in the organization or the clients that I work with, just having these kind of walk-in talks. I mean, even if they're working at home, but during lunch they just connect and go for a walk and talk about work or life or whatever it is. It's super, super important.
Yeah, and I think where that really, that helps me as well. Even the conversation we had before we kicked off the recording, that being able to talk and have someone relate to you and recognize you're not alone with the thoughts that you have, or whether the challenges you're facing. Everyone, it just makes you feel less alone, or it makes you, it's easy to think when you're in your own bubble, when you're in your own, within your own thoughts, to think, I'm the only one in the world going through this. I'm defect, or I'm I'm just not as good as other people. It's easy to get stuck in those kind of self-doubt loops. And I think when you can have those conversations with other people, and you can you recognize that you're not alone in this, and it's not unusual. It's not, and everybody goes through it. I think those are things that really are encouraging and then help you push through, right?
Mm. And encouraging is actually, I'm glad you mentioned that word, because that's something that I've been thinking about as well. But I mean, okay, if I go back to the race metaphor, that when you're running, that you're getting encouragement from people that are along the tracks, that are cheering you on, and from other racers, but this were like, oh, you can do it, you're looking great job. It makes it so much easier, and it's a vast difference when you're out practicing and when you're running a race, in that sense. When, first of all, I mean, you don't have that belonging. So when you're training, you're running by yourself, and when it gets tough, it's so difficult to motivate yourself. Like, nobody's pushing you on, nobody's encouraging you. It's so much more difficult, and you sort of you experience the any kind of discomfort so much more obvious. But when you're in the race, when you're in a sense of belonging, you're sharing this with other people, and there are people cheering you on and encouraging you, you can go so much further, right? So what I think that this has to do with resilience, and this is proven in terms of so many different leadership models, the power of encouragement. I mean, this maybe especially for leaders, but actually for everybody, to just encourage ourselves, but encourage people around you. When you get encouragement from people around you, it builds resilience in a way that is just amazing, right?
Yeah, and I think this goes back to what I was relating about Steve Magnus, where he talks about those old school kind of drill sergeant, whether it's coaches, trainers, or in the actual military, where they try and break you down, and it's all negative, and it's all trying to get you to find your own resilience and to work through. But that only works for maybe a small group of people. But I'm a person too. I find that's why I love coaching, and I every year I'll get some coaching myself, because it really helps me, and I think that encouragement thing is important. And this comes down to motivation, and even things like parenting, or like when I train my dog, I know that scolding didn't do positive reinforcement was the thing that got the behavior that I wanted. And so I think the same goes for yourself. When we are social creatures, and so we want to fit in. We want to, as you say, you like saying yes, well, because we like that positive feedback that comes from it. But I think encouragement is something that helps you break through your negative self-talk, but also it's just it makes you feel like it's that extrinsic motivation, but it's that that positive feedback from externally that helps you push through, and it makes you feel like I can continue. I'm not going to fail. Like I that's why when people talk about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, a lot of times the intrinsic motivation is more kind of, that's the more authentic, that's the good type of motivation. The external is just following the herd. That's not true. We need both, right? We need the feedback of the external world, and we also need the inner drives. But if we only follow our inner impulses, then sometimes that can be very negative. It can be our fears. It can be our negative self-talk. So I think that's an important piece in recognizing how you're being motivated and drawing on all your resources in order to find the resilience and push through.
Yeah, definitely. And then when it comes to encouragement, I guess you can see it as an external motivator, but it's boosting your intrinsic motivation
Yeah.
in sense of your your competence and what you're able to do and your will to do things. So very often some of these motivators can be indirectly connected, I guess, in that sense.
Yeah, well, it's always they're interrelated, and sometimes you need someone to show you an example or to point out something good about you in order for you to see it yourself, right? So
Mm.
like a good mentor would do or whatever. Okay, I wouldn't mind shifting over into how do we find more resilience? Because I've had a lot of thought about this. I have my own practices that I do in order to build my resilience. But I think when we look at it, it's about our instinctual drives would tell us we want to avoid discomfort, right? That's why
Mm.
we continue to try and look for more and more convenience, which I think is detrimental to our resilience and to our own ability to grow.
Mm.
So people get stuck in their comfort zones. So trying to be able to get out of your comfort zone and so on. But what about you? Do you have practices that help build your resilience?
I run.
Yeah, it's a good
No,
one.
but actually, I mean, it's kind of a joke, but it's really it's so true for me that when I feel a bit stressed, or I think I mentioned this before, but if I have any kind of stress level, or if I feel uncomfortable, or things are just a bit too much for me, the best thing for me to do is go out for a run, because when I come back, I just feel a lot better. I have time to reflect on some things, and I maybe shift focus a little bit. So just having a practice of doing something else that takes your attention away from what's troubling you to something else, and then when you come back, you can tackle that issue with a new sense of energy, with new perspectives, and usually it's not as big of a problem as you saw it before. And that's also about taking breaks. Being able to, and this is in a micro environment, but also in more on the long term, that on say on a day-to-day working sort of schedule, you can't just push through all the time for 8-10 hours, or what may. You need to take some breaks, and well, of course, your bio breaks, or get your coffee or nutrition breaks, or whatever it is. But just, yeah, that your body needs to ease down a bit,
Yeah, that reminds me of
mm,
the saying, life's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
yeah.
And so when you, yeah, if you're constantly trying to push through at a pace that you can't maintain, then then that doesn't work for you.
Mm,
That's no, that's interesting. So that's kind of being aware of your state, so that, and knowing when you need breaks, and knowing when you need to shift and your focus onto something else, so you can come back and complete your task. And having the vision for where you want to get to, that all ties into, yeah, that some of the stuff we've already said. So I think for me, I've got a couple of tools that I use. So you obviously have your tools. You've got running, and you've got you've got the self-awareness to when do you need a break. For me, for what the mental tool that I have, and we've talked about it before, I use affirmations. So when I find I there's a certain topic that I have really reoccurring negative thinking loops about,
mm,
then I'll create a statement for myself that I believe is true, that and I say it as if it's already happened, and I whenever these thoughts come, I counter it with my own mantra, my own kind of affirmation that I repeat. That's a really good one to help me push through. And I don't know if you ever use that in running, like when you feel like that negative self-talk, and then you have your you talked about encouragement, but do you find ways to encourage yourself internally?
yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. But that has a lot to do with the experience. Like, you've done this before,
yeah,
you can do it. You can. It's just a phase. This kind of self-talk.
yeah.
So yeah.
So I'll have times when I'm being really self-critical where that kind of encouragement doesn't work, and so that's when when I have my my affirmation ready to go, and I just repeat it until those negative thoughts fade away. The other thing that I do physically, I've heard these, do something every day that scares you. Well, I don't do something every day that scares me, but I think regularly doing things that take you out of your comfort zone is good. I'm a big fan of the Wim Hof method. So some people, English speakers say Wim Hof, but Wim Hof, he's a Dutch guy who has a breathing technique, but he's also known as the Iceman. He's got like 8 world records, including climbing Everest without oxygen and just shorts and a pair of running shoes. But he's got a record for how long he's stayed in an ice bath. He's swum, drilled a hole in the Arctic, swam underneath the ice for 100 meters, and then came back up. Really crazy.
Claustrophobia.
Yeah, just really, extreme, kind of pushes himself to extremes. But so he's got his daily ritual of taking ice baths or cold baths, and he has a breathing technique. But so I do both, and the cold showers is the thing, and I've there's research been done on this. If you take cold showers regularly, it builds your confidence, because just the mental process of knowing you're not going to like this, and doing it anyway. Just like there may be days where it's raining outside or it's cold and you don't feel like going for a run, but you do it anyway, right? And so that act of learning to step into the cold shower anyway. And then I know that afterwards I'll feel great. I'll feel really invigorated because the cold shower, releases adrenaline, endorphins, the same as when you exercise, and so you feel very invigorated. Probably produces a bit of cortisol to wake you up in the morning or whatever. So those are really good things, and I think there's all kinds of things you can do that build your resilience that have to do with doing something that gets you out of your comfort zone. So for me, it's a cold shower. For some people, it'll be, they're afraid of speaking in groups, so they or afraid of public speaking, so they'll start to speak in small groups or in bigger groups and always kind of going beyond. But while also, the thing that I try and emphasize in coaching, when people go, I want to change my life, and they quit their job and they take these extremes. So I draw a picture of, here's your circle of your comfort zone, and then if you take this jump way outside of your comfort zone, fear's going to kick in. You only need one mistake or one setback to send you back into your comfort zone and go, I'm not going to try that again. But if you go up to the edge of your comfort zone and take a small step outside of it, you're going to find a lot more success, and you'll still build your resilience, you'll still build your confidence, but you won't get nearly as discouraged. And that's, also about managing your expectations and so on. But I think if you're trying to do these kind of things, like some people will, they'll base jump or they'll do crazy. I'm not saying it's crazy. I've jumped out of planes, but I'm just saying that they will try and push to extremes, and you don't need to push to extremes in order to find your endurance, your resilience, or at least challenge yourself to get out of your comfort zone. You can be small steps, right?
Yeah. And I think, when you talk about this, for me, I guess that's all about establishing healthy kind of mindsets that are helping me. I think in terms of, for instance, the comfort zone, how far can I go? Where do I want to go next? And it's very much about curiosity. I think I'm a kind of a curious person. I want to understand what I can learn. What is the next kind of challenge for me? How far can I, not to extremes in any way, but within the comfort zone, but that is exciting for me. That creates excitement and motivation. I guess that's the key word for me. But also, this kind of mindset of what are the possibilities here? What kind of opportunities does this bring? And that has to do with curiosity, but just seeing a lot of things as a learning opportunity. I don't have to. It's not about right and wrong or failure or success. It's about what can I learn here? What does this tell me about life or whatever. And I guess that kind of mindset. I know that there's a book called The Scout Mindset that might be
Yeah.
kind of related to that, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
that's isn't that more about motivated reasoning? And anyway,
mm,
I'm familiar with the book you were talking about, but yeah, having a scout mindset of uh, yeah, not staying in your bubble of your what you currently know and your current assumptions. So I
yeah,
agree
yeah,
that that's a good
yeah.
one.
So the Scout Mindset book just popped into my mind, but the mindset is really about yeah. Uh, the learning opportunity.
Yeah,
I mean, because it's I guess it's the growth mindset.
yeah,
I guess it kind of captures that, right?
yeah,
That it's
absolutely.
about what are the learning opportunities here?
Yeah, she in the scout, and I'm drawing a blank on her name, as I often do with names, but she talks about motivated reasoning and biases and
Mm,
I think a lot of those things, and this ties into what we're talking about because the assumptions that you make about what you're capable of doing are a lot of times what will hold you back. And
mm,
if you buy into that mindset, then it's going to be much harder for you to push through and have the resilience to make it through to where you really want to get to.
mm,
So and I agree with you. Curiosity is a really good driver of that, and I think wanting the desire to challenge yourself. I mean, I don't know if I haven't played video games in a long time. Not that I think there's anything wrong with it. I just don't find the time for it. But
mm.
but I think how boring it would be to stay on the easiest level, right? When people play video games, they go to the higher levels and higher levels, and they continue to challenge themselves. And I love playing basketball with guys who are a lot better than me. Maybe it's annoying for them, but for me, I love it because it forces me to get to another, to improve, to raise my game. It brings out the best in me, playing against more skilled, better players, and I can learn from it. Okay, I'm at an age where it doesn't really matter, but I still, because I'm passionate about the game, I still want to tend to improve. I see the guitars hanging in the background there. I mean, you can just learn three chords and probably play a lot of songs, and if you're happy with that, but you probably you want to expand your knowledge, and the more you learn, the more you want to learn, right? So
Mm.
I think curiosity is a really good one. And sort of on that note, I guess how do we instill more of I kind of feel, and I don't know what your worldview is, but I kind of feel like society is going in a direction. We're always looking for more convenience. We're always looking to make things easier for
Mm.
ourselves. And then we there are outliers where people who really excel and really break through barriers. But I think there's also when I think sometimes there's a few examples I've had recently where I think where I see a real lack of resilience, right? Where
Mm.
people are easily emotionally discouraged or easily, giving up way before they get anywhere close to their potential. And so I think this is a really important thing. And I wonder. I was thinking about this when you brought up the topic,
Mm.
how you do this because I'm not a parent, but with you've got kids. How do you instill that resilience in them? And as a coach, I want to help people find resilience in their own practices and things the goals they're trying to achieve. So
Mm.
I'm interested, especially because I'm a big fan of Jonathan Haidt. He's American psychologist and social psychologist, and he's done a lot of research on everything. And he's written a book called The Coddling of the American Mind. Right. So
Mhm.
so he talks about how kind of being very overly protective of our kids is causing them to be less resilient, right?
Mm.
And the other famous author who wrote talked about being anti-fragile. The name will come to me, but these are the
Mm.
things that I think all tie into resilience. Being anti-fragile, finding ways not coddling ourselves or our children in order to build more resilience, right? So finding a happy medium between, well, there were times when, what parents used to do a few generations ago would be considered abuse now, to the other extreme where, are we even allowing kids or young people to really be challenged or challenge themselves? So as a parent, what's your view on that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's kind of you're dealing with kind of a contradiction, because especially as a parent, you want to, at the same time as you want to create independence, you want to still create relation and to keep the relation. So you want to keep something, but make it go away from you at the same time. So that's kind of contradiction in itself. Yeah. And that's one of the interesting and the fantastic things about parenting, that you have this fantastic relation where you want to keep things as they are, but still there's this really strong urge to develop the child in this example to become independent and actually make you want to go away from you. So that's I don't know if that's a biological tendency we have or where it comes from, but that's interesting to start with.
Yeah.
For me personally, I think it's what I do, and I don't consider this best practice or anything, but what I think is working quite well is just by trying to expose them to as much different kind of experiences as possible. And that's by being an active parent myself, so like doing things with them, of course, but also giving them the opportunities to attend different kind of experiences. By this time, and anyone who's listening understand that I'm really into sports and I enjoy sport. So they attend a lot of different kind of practices, from karate to soccer to hockey to tennis to dancing or whatever it is. And I think that's a great opportunity for them to meet different kind of people from different backgrounds, but it's also training them in both physical and mental endurance. I mean, to grow physically, but also mentally, to understand how do I improve, what I do need to do to get better, etc. And I guess that becomes kind of the metaphor that we utilize in-house in our family as well, when it comes to what are the chores that you have to do today, what kind of homework do you have, what kind of practice do you have to do, etc., etc. So it provides a structure, a curiosity, a diverse set of perspectives on things that I think is really healthy. So that and it's just about being active with them and creating opportunities and experiences from them. But of course also setting the boundaries of what's okay and what's not okay. But I guess any kind of parent does that.
Okay, well I want to give you
okay. Don't make me sound like this extreme, athletic sports nerd. No. It doesn't have to be about sports. When I was a kid, I went to choirs and I played cello, etc. So whatever it is, but I think the important thing is just to the extent of your abilities to create experiences that are away from home, and that is away from iPads or iPhones or any kind of tablets that you might be using, right?
Yeah. Well,
because they're going to do that anyway. That can be great, but there's other things to do.
I've got a few different examples in my head of over the years of things that I wonder, whether they're the right thing to do. And again, I'm not saying I have the answer to this, but for example, years ago, a friend of a friend, she had a newborn, and she was a nurse, so understood, I guess, certainly understood human biology, but who had a newborn and didn't take the child out of the house for the first, I think it was 8 months. Didn't want to expose them to anything outside. And I'm like, well, isn't that the way a baby develops their immune system? Obviously through the mother's milk and everything, but also being exposed to bacteria and harmful things, so the body can build a resistance. So that's one example. And actually, there was one of the talks that Jonathan Haidt gave. he asked people to raise their hands, and from two, the older people in the group, when was the first time you were allowed to do something? What age were you when you were allowed to do something without the supervision of your parents, right? And so, and he gave an age range, and so for the older generation, it's probably my generation, it was a much younger age, like 6 or 7, first time they were able to go off to the store by themselves. And then they sort of asked the millennium crowd, and for them it was like 10 or 12 years old before they could ever, and so this sense that of really trying to protect our kids, and when are they have the giving them any kind of autonomy or the ability to go out. And I think Sweden's an outlier, because I know that Swedish mothers will leave their baby in a baby carriage outside of the cafe while they go and have because it's so safe.
And freak out.
Yeah, and
foreigners freak out.
Yeah, because there was a Swedish woman in the U.S. that did that apparently and got arrested. So there's the one thing, and then there's another example. A while back, I was on a car ride with a few people, and there was a child who'd been snacking in the car all morning, and then we were about 15 minutes away from the destination, and the child was like, "I'm hungry," and so we immediately had to find a gas station with a food court so we could get some food, even though in 15 minutes. So this obviously you don't want your kids to go hungry, but clearly. Here's a child who it wasn't like they hadn't had anything to eat all day, and also we were it's a wait of 15 minutes, right? So maybe in 20 minutes we would have been able to feed them, but and again, not passing judgment, but like for me, who I'm someone who does intermittent fasting, so I try and maintain. Not eating for 16 hours and trying to eat all my meals within 8. And I've now realized that, from looking at the research and so on, that being hungry is really good. Like being able to feel hungry and the resilience to overcome that sort of. And I'm not talking about starving yourselves, and certainly it's not encouragement for any kind of eating disorders. I don't think it's about having a healthy relationship to that. So again, there's the example of children where we're trying to give the instinct as a parent, I can imagine, is to just want to give your child everything they need and everything that's important to them. And obviously food and nutrition is one of those things, that absolutely, without a doubt. But when, at what point is it hampering their ability to develop resilience? You see what I'm getting at? At what point, if we're, because there's sometimes, I'll feel hungry, but I just feel like snacking. It's boredom or something like that. Or, we'll feel some like when you run, you feel some pain, but you can push through and you'll recover. And I think that even. It's great that all the playgrounds now have like the really padded, so you can't seriously injure yourself. But on the other hand, kids are going to scrape their knees, and they're going to learn that through that, not to do that again or this. And so this line between, being there for our kids and making sure they're properly cared for, encouraged, and not getting seriously hurt, but also giving them the opportunity to make mistakes and, get their cuts and bruises and grow and become more resilient through that. And that this is the thing that I wonder about as not being a parent, because I see that as, these are the people that I'll be coaching at some point if I'm still coaching by then. And because I think this relates even to adults that helping them find resilience. So I'm trying to kind of draw it all together, but I'm interested in your view as a parent on those examples that I gave you.
Yeah. I think I recognize a lot of that. It's something that all parents are struggling with. It's a balance act of how much do you cuddle, how much do you sort of train them or expose them to discomfort, or not discomfort for its own self, but to endure discomfort and to be able to grow through that. Personally, I think it's it's just really important to have that, again, mindset, to train it, to practice it, and to have the awareness of what are the consequences of the decisions that I'm making as a parent right now. And very often, I mean, there's a lot of great parents out there, and I'm not going to say that I'm an A grade parent in any way, if you can grade it anyway. But I think there's a lot of parents that are suffering from letting the children set the agenda more, and then they don't provide that opportunity to train resilience and then to create it. So it's something that I think we really need to actively work on and think about as parents, through a little bit of what I mentioned, to be able to expose them to experiences and to opportunities to experience different kind of things, but also to be clear on how we set the boundaries.
Yeah. And
because the children, they're smart, they're gonna challenge those boundaries all the time.
Yeah.
So when we start nudging a little bit, it's just they're gonna be in control of it, and then all of a sudden, we're on the back heel of things.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. Okay. Well, that's interesting because because I observe people who I think are fantastic parents all the time, and then there's just one thing they do where I go, Are you motivated out of fear there? Like, what is it? Or maybe there's something that they weren't allowed to do as a kid, and they want to be more, they want to try and correct that in their kids or whatever. I'm just curious about what motivates people to do these things. And
okay, man, and sometimes it's laziness, like, I can't deal with this right now, or okay, today we can do it like this, and I don't have the energy to do it. So it can be a lot of different factors, I guess. But I think the as a parent, it's really, and it goes back to that part where I actually started, that inner conflict of nurturing versus creating independence. Where are you going with this? And that's the difficult balancing act as a parent that we have to manage in a good way. And so really just be, again, awareness. What am I doing right now? What kind of consequences is this? Are these kind of behaviors actually leading to?
Yeah, and I'm sure with kids, it's also, what are they? Because kids mature at different ages, and what are they? Meeting them where they are, and recognizing what they're capable of handling right now. Because obviously, you want to be able to allow them to be challenged, but you don't want to overwhelm them with things that are going to emotionally scar them or anything like that. So it's just finding that balance, because I nurturing, I think is really important. And I think obviously in child development, having encouragement and a lot of love there, those are really key. But I had one coaching client years ago who said, I think my parents, the problem that she had with her parents is that they loved her too much. And it's interesting, like, that's not something you hear every day, right? That's not a complaint you hear every day. So it's interesting that, and I wonder about finding that balance. So whether it's, with the way we treat each other as adults, in relationships, I think, you can, like, for me, the ideal relationship is one where they have this really good balance of support and challenging. I want to feel supported by my partner, but I also want them to challenge me, not to get settled in my comfort zone, because, you're married. Once you get into a committed relationship for a long time, and you start to take things for granted, and you can get into comfort zones that aren't healthy for the relationship and not healthy for you, right? So I think really having people in your life that are supportive but also challenge you, so that, because if you can get soft, you can get, and that's why I think that's why I love the topic that you brought up. I think resilience is a really important thing, and I really feel that as a society, or it varies from the country to country, obviously, but when I look at North America and I see that the how convenience has really dominated the culture, where it's there's it's too much hassle to cook a meal. I just want something instant. Well, it's not really that much hassle. I love to cook, so it's easy for me to say that. But it's not that much hassle, and the rewards, overly processed foods versus something that's And plus, I believe in putting the most important ingredient in cooking is love, right? You got to put some love in that food. And so I think that that's my philosophy. That's where I'm coming at it from. But it doesn't need to just be there. It's like, when you have the choice between the elevator or the escalator or the stairs, I will 9 times out of 10 take the stairs unless I'm super tired or I'm carrying something really heavy. But for the most part, I will always take the stairs because I know it's another opportunity to keep fit, keep my body working well. And I think that what our mindset or this drive to ever more convenience is undermining a lot of things, including our resilience and our ability to handle tough situations. I mean, when you think about just 2 generations ago, or even when I think about my aunt who's 83 and she was a little kid, but she lived through a world war. I mean, and then hunger after that, and economic struggle and so on, and it's the hard things in our life. I mean, we don't like going through them, and this is no comparison. But and I often talk about my own life. But when I went through a divorce, it was not a great thing. But now it contributed to me being much better at relationships and being much better at having much better self-awareness and all these things. But even other challenges and other things that I didn't like in life, that were the most, they caused the most positive change in me. So I think when we start to look at challenges and problems and difficulties as something that we can really build on and learn from, it's not like every day I want to have challenges and negative things in my life, but when you can embrace those things, I think that's a mindset to be able to embrace challenges, even if there's going to be some pain involved and some discomfort and some things that you don't like. But at the end, there's going to be a better outcome for it, I think. Yeah.
I think I agree. I think that's a really healthy mindset, and it kind of summarizes what we talked about. So sort of challenging that comfort zone, but also making sure that having the awareness of it's going to be, some things will be difficult, but then making sure that you have people to talk to that can that belonging and support system who can support you, who can you talk to, who can you share your ideas with, or your discuss, because sometimes you need to talk to. If you bear it all on your own, it might be actually draining you. So I mean, if I would give any kind of encouragement, is to challenge yourself, but make sure that you have some kind of support system as well. It's a great way to build resilience, but also to just develop and grow and have a enriching, fun life.
And don't bite off more than you can chew, sort of thing. It's in the same way that we encourage people that we coach to make sure that goals are achievable. They want to be challenging but also achievable, and I think that the same thing goes for anything in life. If challenge yourself to go just beyond your comfort zone, just beyond your current skill set, but not way beyond it. Otherwise, you're just going to get discouraged and fail. So that sounds like a good place to wrap it up. What do you think?
I guess, yeah. I mean, I realized that where we ended up there, it's much, if you look at the GROW model, for instance, it's very much these kind of questions that you might finish a session with, so what's going to happen if you run into trouble? Who's going to be there to support you? What are your next steps? What is the next thing that you're going to commit to? So breaking down these objectives into achievable goals, etc. So it's just an interesting reflection.
Yeah, good. Well, thanks everyone for listening to another conversation, and I hope this has brought everybody some good tips and insights on building your own resilience and understanding the importance of having that in your life. And if you have any questions about this, I mean, Tobi and I are both certified coaches, and I think if anybody is struggling with finding their resilience in tough times, reach out to somebody, whether it's a friend or a coach. There's no reason to have to go through it alone. And I think that's the thing that's going to help you get through and find more resiliency in yourself. So thanks again for listening. Tobi, thanks for another great topic and conversation today. And
thanks,
look forward to the next one. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you soon.
Bye.